I very much think that is the metaphor, and I think if anybody is to deliver that metaphor, it might as well be me. See, a man who has had a great deal of difficulty processing the past tense and accepting the present and indeed the future. I think, as I say, that probably comes, a great deal from one's upbringing, and I think, given that I am adopted, and given that my parents were considerably older when they adopted me, which was a big ask at the time, to think about people being in their sort of, I mean, my mum would be the age, well, I am the age that my mum was when she adopted me now. And I think about the undertaking of that and whether or not, if I was to adopt somebody at the age that I am now, what incredibly difficult and all-consuming and yet selfless thing that was that she did. And she died when I was still relatively young, and my dad died when I was 12. And I think there are certain things that I regret now, looking back in my life, that I could have done to sort of curb the fact that I have great deal of difficulty in letting go. And I often talk in lyrics about the past and as if it's a real thing. And I always talk about it being in sepia or monochrome, and that's how we view things. And I think largely we view these things in such a way because, of course, the records of obviously anybody that grew up in the 70s, are records of history, our photographic records, and our cinematic records of our time on this earth are kind of recorded in a very sort of basic, sort of fuzzy, kind of otherworldly way. And that adds another level of sort of, I don't know.
Nostalgia?
Yeah, it adds another level of nostalgia to the fact that in actual fact, if you were to suddenly go back to what you remember as being the most incredible time in your life when you were maybe, 11 or 12, it probably wouldn't be as incredible as you thought it. I mean, all I remember when I was 11 or 12 was wanting to get to 18 so I could start, squiring dames around. And obviously looking back at it now, but it was a simpler time if you think about it. And that's, I think, why people look backwards so much, because everything always seems, everybody ends up becoming their dad or their mum in the end. And that's quite funny, actually, in a way, because I remember I wrote a song with it by, it's called Ghosts. And the lyric is, everything I hated, I'm becoming more in time. I think the fact that, you kind of, when you're a kid, you don't value your parents as much as you should do. Once they're gone, you think, oh, I could have, think of all the questions I would ask knowing what I know now, and kind of looking for something that perhaps doesn't exist. I think that in itself is the larger picture, and a lot of the narrative of Lonely Robot is a sort of melancholic view of, or sort of perhaps a rarefied sort of rose-tinted view of my view of the past, and trying to reclaim it in some way. But certainly there's a song at the end of A Model Life called In Memoriam, which I wrote about my dad, and how they can, over the course of leading up to a certain point in my adult life, I kind of I kind of wanted to create an iteration of myself that he would be in some way, I suppose, proud of. But I realise now that's a fool's errand, because being adopted, I have no characteristics in common with the man. I didn't strive for his sort of 80s Tory way of being. I don't strive that now, and I don't know that he would necessarily have taken a particularly strong view or a positive view of what it is my chosen career path has been, which is largely getting away in the field of music since I was a wee snip of a lad. But it is the path that I've chosen, rightly or wrongly. And it's brought me much happiness, much sadness, and I've certainly seen a lot more of the world than one could ever possibly imagine. Had I ever worked in that West Bank, for example? No offence to anybody that does work in that West Bank. The end. The reason that this is the last iteration of Lonely Robot is actually, when we started albums 4 and 5, prior to that, I had a discussion with the powers that be about releasing music under my own name. And a long discussion was had, but it had been decided at the time, purely from a financial point of view and a business point of view, that we had established the brand and that we should continue under the Lonely Robot name. Now, I think some people, rightly or wrongly, it's a funny thing to me, because when I read comments from people on the odd occasion, I do put my head above the parapet and look at the comments on social media. A lot of people are unaware that there are albums 4 and 5. They thought it ended at 3, and that may, in some reason, have something to do with the fact that album 4, Feelings Are Good, was released right in the middle of the COVID pandemic, and probably didn't get the traction or the necessary people. I think people were preoccupied with other things than progressive rock albums at the time, and then I think that that had a significant impact on it. And I think in some ways it was a bit confusing to people, because obviously it was, to my mind, to listen to it now, it does sound, from a production point of view, markedly different. The drums sound very different. It was more stripped back. There weren't as many guitar solos. I decided to play synth instead. I thought I was from Hoxton or something, and we all play synth. And by the time we got around to the 5th album, I think maybe I just wanted to continue down that road, but I just don't think it necessarily, perhaps, the sound of it was perhaps different. Anyway, long story short, in my mind, being the completist that I am, and the collector of things, and the need to finish the cycle, I always knew that I wanted there to be, if we were going to start Lonely Robot, there were going to be 3 albums, because it was a 3-album deal at the time. And if we were going to continue, there were going to be another 3 albums. So, all things considered, I wanted to complete this and give it the correct finish that I felt it deserved. Or to my mind, it felt after a model life that things were left hanging a little bit, and I wanted to, as much as I'm very, very, very proud of that album, I felt like that it didn't really feel like I had closure on the whole thing. So that's why. And moving forward with this, if I can muster the will to do another album, it won't be under the Lonely Robot name, and it will probably be markedly different sonically to what this is.
Tom's father.
Well, thank you for asking that, Sarah. I basically booked myself into Dignitas.